As consumers, we are bombarded by it at every turn, like the Incredible Hulk being bombarded by gamma rays. But what makes some media endure, while others are banished to the forgotten black hole of obscurity, never to be heard from again? Who or what decides this? Hetero life mates Steve and Yahel want to know, and they want to know now. This is Obscurity Now. And what's up, Obscurians? It's time for another episode of Obscurity Now, the show that takes a look at weird and almost forgotten pieces of media and then decides if they should be tossed into the black void of obscurity, never to be heard from again or remembered for all of human history. I'm one of your hosts, Steve, and with me is a man who's resolved to be more obnoxious, more overbearing, and there's nothing you can do about it, so you might as well learn to love it.
Oh, it's Yahel. How are you doing, Steven?
I'm doing great. Do you get the reference?
No, I didn't get the reference, actually.
It's like a clip that's been going around, I guess, on the talk of Ric Flair, basically. It's like a Jim Crockett interview. And it's basically the subtitle that people put on top of it is My New Year's Resolution. And he says that he's going to be more obnoxious, more overbearing, and you might as well learn to love it because there's nothing you can do about it.
Okay. Well, no, I missed out on that, which is fine. It's fine. I'm about Ric Flaired out these days.
What?
He's got another documentary out, man. This is like the fourth, we don't need to know this much.
Right. I agree with you, but I mean, this is classic Ric Flair, right? Where the man just needs money, doesn't really care about things like dignity. And so he's willing to,
or the words "no, please stop."
Right.
He doesn't care about that either.
Well, I mean, he's got child support and wives to pay. I probably not child support.
Oh, that's not what I was referring to.
Yeah. Oh, I get what you're referring. Ouch! Wow. Nowhere to go there except down.
That was the problem. They had nowhere to go from there. They couldn't escape.
They had no choice but to learn to love it. I mean, Space Mountain.
Ooh, I don't think so. I don't. Well, we should just move on. Steve,
hey, you brought it there.
You
brought it there.
Let's lighten this up by discussing New Year's Evil, a movie about murder.
Is it about murder? I mean, it's barely about New Year's Eve. Yeah, so we're here. It's New Year's Day. I'll just go ahead and give you an official Happy New Year's.
Oh, yeah, Happy New Year's to you too,
I mean,
Steve.
do you care about New Year's? I really don't.
No, I don't care too much about Christmas either.
Yeah. Wait, too late, Abe. You had like 3-4 episodes to shit on Christmas, so that's let's just leave Christmas.
No, I know other people out there like it. I mean, it's fine. I like the time off from work. It's just not my thing.
I'm just saying, why bring it up, man? Christmas is in the past, dude. We got to move forward. It's 2023.
All right, man. Well, if you say so.
The next 5 episodes are all going to be about VR again.
Now that's the ticket. That's the real holiday.
VR day in January. But no, yeah, this is New Year's Evil. It's a horror movie from the 1980s. Should we just dive right in?
Yeah, sure. Let's get into it.
All right, here we go.
Welcome to your feature presentation.
I just wanted to get more into about the fact that neither of us went out for New Year's because, I think that's kind of funny that you didn't go out because you pretty much, don't you pretty much go out every weekend? You specifically chose not to.
Not necessarily, but I've never really done anything like out and about on New Year's Eve. There's just too many amateur drunks, and I'm a professional.
Just Steven, like one Ric Flair, yeah.
Exactly. Well, he doesn't know how to handle himself. Despite how much he drinks, he seems to be an amateur,
Oh
based
wow.
on his actions. But
I don't think
yeah,
I
like
like
it's.
your heel turn towards Ric Flair. I don't like it one bit.
Oh, I mean, I've thought he's a terrible person for a long, long time. I mean, he is a terrible one of the all-time greats in the ring, of course. Super entertaining. He can cut a promo like nobody else. But he is also basically a fan of committing sexual assault.
But it
So
was the '80s, just like New Year's Evil.
that's not what he stopped.
Great. Well, we just got demonetized. Not that we were ever monetized to begin with. Yeah. Speaking of,
Don't worry, Ric Flair will find a way to monetize this.
right, he's going to give us the Ric Flair bump somehow.
Well,
So yes, speaking of the 1980s, we're talking about New Year's Evil. Originally I pitched it to you as this New Year's slasher horror, but it's really more of a thriller, I'd say. What do you think in terms of genre?
yeah, I'd go with that as well. Definitely was less horror slasher, more
Yeah,
thriller.
more kind of psycho and less like Halloween or Friday the 13th. But
Yeah.
Yeah, so it premiered December 19th, 1980. It runs about 1 hour, 25 minutes, and it's rated R. And In case you don't want this movie spoiled for you by us, because we're going to talk through the whole plot, what little plot there is. And you can go watch it right now on Amazon Prime. I would say for free, but for the cost of an Amazon Prime membership. You guys know how.
Steve, you're lying. It is no longer available on Amazon Prime. It's no longer available on Tubi. It's no longer available on Paramount Plus. It was available at all those places yesterday.
Ooh,
So
interesting.
I guess like whatever licensing deal, it's up through expired. However, much to my chagrin, because I watched it today.
Oh, wow.
Thankfully, somebody uploaded it to YouTube though, and it's in really, really good quality. So you can watch it on YouTube for free if you just search for New Year's Evil 1980.
Well, I'm so sorry you had to hunt for it. You should have just let me know. I would have hooked you up. Just like,
Oh, I mean, it literally took like 10 seconds to find it.
well,
Uh,
way to go. Way to persevere. That's the Obscurity Now
yeah.
way.
Yeah, new year, new me, Steve. I don't reach out to you for shit.
What? You've never reached out to me for shit.
I mean, sometimes if I can't find
I
something,
mean, I
think
used to
that's-
have to pretty much be your chauffeur in Tampa because you didn't have the. Well, you had the.
Well, Steve, like Christmas, that's in the past.
Oh, you don't want to relive those days where I was basically your Alfred to you being
It was so
Batman.
long ago, Steve, and
And
who
then
knows what happened.
what made it even sadder is that I had to drive your car because my car kept breaking down. Oh man,
See, Steve, it's like we were two halves of a real adult.
we were. Wow,
And,
we really were. That's just like that Seinfeld where Jerry and George team up so Jerry can date this girl because she's like really busy or something. But anyway, you know the important questions here, Yahel, and that is, did you have any history? Had you ever even heard of New Year's Evil prior to me recommending that we watch it and talk about it?
No, I had not. However, when you told me about it, the first thing I did was I was going to go look for it on Tubi. And funny enough, Tubi recommended it to me before I even looked for it. Then I promptly proceeded to not watch it there. But
Well played, sir. Well played. And
what about you, man? How did you find out about this?
I had heard of it. I had heard of it. I'd seen clips
There
of
you
it here and there. I think it's one of those where I probably started watching and then it got late and then I had to go to bed and then I never went back and finished it because I remember a lot of the scenes in the club with I mean it's not a club, I guess it's technically a studio with the bands and stuff and being sort of befuddled by the way the crowd looked versus how the band sounded. But we'll
Yeah.
get to that in a moment. For those of you who are unfamiliar with New Year's Evil, here's a synopsis. During a New Year's Eve celebration, a Los Angeles disc jockey receives a phone call saying that when New Year's strikes in each time zone, someone will be murdered, and she will be the last one. And this was directed by one Emmett Alston. And he's got quite the filmography. He's done Force of the Ninja, Tiger Shark, in no way related to the animated series Tiger Sharks. Just, because I know you were thinking that, but it's not.
Yeah, that was my main concern.
But his first film, oh man, which also can be viewed on YouTube. It's called Three-Way Weekend. And I'm going to go ahead and read the synopsis for that because...
Yeah, I noticed that you included this in your in the show format you sent me, and I was like, wait, are we covering this instead? I was really confused.
I mean, I just think it's funny, and more people should know about this, but probably never watch it. I actually tried to watch a little bit of it on YouTube, but it's pretty bad. Anyway, the synopsis for Three-Way Weekend is as follows. Two bisexual girls go camping in the woods and are followed around by a perverted guy in a gorilla mask and a man in uniform with a whip who thinks everyone's a communist. Strange sexual encounters ensue, and other people show up out of nowhere. They do drugs, and an incomprehensible plot follows.
This is like a weekend at Mar-a-Lago.
Yeah, yeah, or Epstein Island.
Everyone's a communist.
Yeah, Epstein Island also. There you go. Now, if we weren't demonetized before, now we are. So this was actually written, and by this I mean New Year's Evil. Put Three-Way Weekend, in the back of your mind, and you can watch it later. We won't judge. It's okay. But the writers of New Year's Evil as follows. Emmett Alston is responsible for the story, the aforementioned director, but the hard work was done by Leonard Neubauer. And he's known for a bunch of movies I've never heard of before called, in the name of, Black Snake, Run for the Hills, and The Lady Wants Justice. And New Year's Evil was his final film. And I'd say for good reason. And the production company responsible for New Year's Evil is my favorite, and possibly the internet hipster community's favorite, the Cannon Group. And what I'd like to know is what's your experience with Cannon films? Let me throw out a few of them. I'm sure you must have at least seen Masters of the Universe, Superman 4, Cobra with Sylvester Stallone, and the American Ninja series. Did you see any of those? Are you familiar with Cannon?
Yeah. I recognize Cannon. Like, I couldn't remember offhand like what movies of theirs I had watched or whatever, but I recognize the name and the logo right away. But yeah, I've seen all those movies that you mentioned, so it's not like they're nobody.
Right. Well, it's just one of those, I don't know, kind of graduated to sort of like a cult, following since, they ran themselves out of business after bankrupting themselves with the Masters of the Universe, basically. But I mean, it's weird. It wasn't until I watched the documentary on Cannon, I don't know, like 10 years ago, where I realized that, oh my gosh, that was a Cannon movie. And I had seen so many of them, like as a prepubescent teenage boy, and they just stuck with me for so long. Mostly due to the mindless violence that a lot of them have.
Yeah, did you read that at one point Cannon had the rights to make Spider-Man movies?
Yeah, I did know that. Yeah, in fact, like, if I'm not... No, wait. No, that's not the case. There's something with Cyborg where their sets were... They were either from... They were supposed to be from the Spider-Man movie that didn't get made, so they just... use them to make Cyborg, the one with Van Damme. Did you ever hear that?
No, I was not aware of that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we could talk for Cannon I didn't want this to be our first Cannon movie that we talk about, but whatever, here we are. Why don't you tell me who are some of the actors involved in this masterpiece?
All right, well, I'm not going to go over really like what they did after because I mean, nobody really did anything of note from what I could
Mm.
see. But first up, we've got Kip Niven. He plays our killer, Richard
Spoiler alert.
Sullivan. Well, I mean, we find out like in like the first 10
Right.
minutes, don't we?
Sort of.
Wait, did I misunderstand something in the movie? Because like we'll get
Yeah.
into it. But anyways, he plays the killer. I didn't really see anything particularly noteworthy that he did. I mean, he's certainly been in movies that like, and from what I remember, he acted the longest. Like his last film was in 2019.
Yeah, I saw that.
A lot of these other people, like their latest. This movie came out in 1980, and for a lot of people, their latest or most recent credit was like 1985 or something like that. So, he at least had a decent career. He's got 93 credits on IMDb, so not bad at all. But a lot of bit parts in TV series, like one-offs and that kind of a thing. Did you have something to add about Kip Niven? Are you a Kip head?
Kip head. Not really. I mean, I would say the one movie that stands out to me in his IMDb is Earthquake. You ever watch Earthquake? Or
Yeah, I never watched it, but I mean, I heard of it, and obviously there was a Universal Studios
I'd say
ride.
the ride is probably more
based on it.
well known than the actual movie. But I did watch that movie at one point. But yeah, for the most part, you're right. I mean, who cares about the Waltons and Falcon Crest? Well, Chips.
I saw an episode. I saw an episode of the Waltons before as a kid, and it's shit.
Well,
It's
you did
boring.
leave out Knight Rider. You got to mention Knight Rider, and
There's actually he's not the only person that was on Knight Rider. One of the female actors was also on Knight Rider.
Simon and Simon.
So don't let anybody on Knight Rider, basically, including David Hasselhoff. But anyways, moving along, we've got Roz Kelly, who plays Diane Sullivan, the wife of Richard Sullivan. Her last credit was in 1983. And again, lots of bit parts here and there. She did guest star in an episode of Charlie's Angel. So and The Love Boat, Kojak. Yeah,
Wow,
nothing
she
really.
was in the animated film American Pop. You ever see that?
I've never even heard
Oh,
of
it's
it.
really good. We might have to consider doing that one. But yeah, for it's weird. Like it seems much like the aforementioned Kip Niven. Yeah, she's mostly a TV actress who got roped into doing this movie somehow.
Yeah. And up next, we've got Grant Kramer, who plays Derek Sullivan. He is the son of Richard and Diane Sullivan, two characters I just went over. And he's still doing stuff. He only has 38 credits. And to be fair, one of his only 2022 credit is the Horror Heathens podcast. So I'm assuming he was on there talking about this. But he does have some stuff from like 2021 and 2014. So... but yeah, I didn't really see anything else of note that he did. Looks like a lot of horror stuff, like a low budget horror kind of stuff. Nothing really interesting. But I will say this movie is his first, at least I guess like movie that he did. His first acting credit on IMDb.
That is interesting.
Then we've got Chris Wallace, who I mostly know from the evening news, but he plays Lieutenant Clayton. And again, really, he's actually got some stuff more recently, something in 2019, but nothing of note. So I'm not going to go over
there
it.
is one thing of note, and that is the Incredible Hulk TV show.
Oh, like the one with
Bill Bixby, yep.
Okay. So there's that. We've got Jed Mills, who plays Ernie, who I can't even remember who Ernie was. I think he was one of the was he one of the guys helping the detectives?
No, he is her agent, Diane's agent.
Oh, that's right. He's the one that like tells. Okay, yeah, I remember now. And yeah, like him, like almost everybody else, nothing really of note. His most recent thing is 2017. It was a short. He was in Quantum Leap and an episode of Seinfeld. So
good for him.
Oh, and an episode of Twin Peaks, Steve.
Twin Peaks connection.
That makes you happy.
It does make me happy. I really don't recognize
he was
him
also
at all, though.
Well, he was also in an episode of The Incredible Hulk.
Nice.
Oddly enough.
Nice.
So But yeah, I mean, and most of the rest of the cast are people we don't interact with too much, just people that get killed. So I'm not gonna go over them.
Hmm.
We do have two cops, which I couldn't really tell from IMDb who played the cops. I couldn't remember
Yeah,
their
the hero
names.
one at the
Uh,
end is named Sergeant Green, and ironically,
Played by
yeah,
John Green,
they put a lot of thought into that.
and like both are spelled with an E at the
Yeah,
end. Like
yeah.
they really put no thought
I
into
could just see him showing up to work, and he's like, well, what's my name?" It's like, "Yeah, how about Sergeant Green?" I'm like,
it.
okay.
Yeah, but um, that's pretty much like the people I felt were of note or worth mentioning in the cast. There are some people like in these bands that they have playing at the show, which I'm sure you'll get into. And I didn't really look into any of them. I don't know if you know if those were like real musicians
Yeah,
or.
they were real bands. As we're about to see, the opening band is called Shadow, and then there's another one that takes the stage called Made in Japan.
And I could have sworn I had heard that name before, like as a
Hmm.
band. So like I was like, oh, maybe these are like actual bands.
Yeah. But yeah, you ready to jump into the walkthrough
Let's
as
do
he
it.
sips his alcohol?
What are you sipping?
It's lemonade and vodka. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
all right, so here we go. We open with the beautiful Canon logo, which actually it's not the typical Canon logo that you would see if you were to watch Death Wish or Cyborg, but I'm always happy to see it no matter what film it precedes. So we open on a wide shot of a city at night. It ends up being Los Angeles, and there's a spooky synthy music swells in the background. Now we're inside a dressing room, and a woman is getting way too much makeup put on her face by like a hair and makeup lady, as her sleazy manager yells at her to hurry up. And this is Diane, who's also known as Dee, and her manager, Bernie. She tells him to relax, and she tells him to go get Yvonne on the phone. And then and then we cut to another scene of Yvonne, a smartly dressed woman entering an apartment. As the phone rings, she answers and talks to ends up talking to Dee. They talk about Richard, who is Dee's husband, and basically they're like, oh, he's drunk, he's nowhere to be found, he's not answering the phone, which ends up being important later. The makeup lady or Dee complains to the manager about Richard, and then they show Yvonne again. And man, do you think she has enough stuff in her hair?
Sure has a lot. There's a lot of interesting fashion and just a lot of interesting
Yeah, yeah.
choices
This
made
is
in this.
definitely a time capsule movie.
Oh
Where
yeah.
yeah, which is one of the few. I mean, if you're looking for that kind of movie, this would be the one to watch.
You know, one thing that's interesting about the movie visually to me is like, so this movie was released in 1980, so presumably probably filmed in 79,
Hmm.
right? Maybe even 78. Um, but the movie, like, usually with these early 80s movies, there's kind of like a hodgepodge of fashion and trends from the
Hmm.
70s and a little bit from the 80s. But this really feels like straight up 80s to me.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, I would say late 70s at least when we get to like the styles of the so-called new wavers that start showing up. Um,
right. And I think that's why it's because of the new waivers. That's probably why it's less 70s, just because you're not going to see people like in, leisure suits or like, what's that material that all that stuff was made of
Polyester.
in the 70s?
Well, they do go
Polyester.
to that discotheque later on.
Oh,
Um,
yeah, yeah, they do. You know what, Steve? I'll just leave. You're
no, I
right.
can't do it without you. But who will pretend to laugh at my unfunny jokes if you're not around? I mean, no one bothered to show up in the chat today for some reason. They're all drunk and hungover, I bet.
Yeah,
You know
yeah.
how.
I mean, they probably assumed we would have taken New Year's Day off,
Well,
like a
we already
normal.
took Christmas off. I mean, my God. Like I don't know. I'm glad we're doing the show. Fuck New Year's. There we go.
Wow.
So yeah, Yvonne begins to de-makeup. Basically, she hears water dripping in her shower, and I guess we're supposed to assume that maybe someone is in there because the synth score starts swelling
Hmm.
again. She opens it and turns it down a bit, and then does the classic sort of horror movie trope. Asks, "Who's there?" She asks to no one. Oh yeah, because she heard her door creak open. And she goes and checks it. No one's there. And then she goes in. She hears the shower creeping again, or dripping again. She goes in
Right.
there and tries to turn it down once again. And then a man with a mask extends a switchblade, and they disappear behind the shower curtain. And all we hear is her muffled screams and stabbing noises. So, what did you think of our cold open, Yahel?
I mean, it was fine. I was hoping like at first I was like, oh, okay, so I guess this is gonna be like a slashery kind of movie. A lot of the violence here is implied. You don't really like see the
Mm-hmm.
stabbing 'cause it happens behind the shower curtain and stuff. But I thought it was fine. What did you think?
Yeah, I mean, as far as setting up this kind of movie, it does, all the sort of standard tropes are there. Like, if you're
Right,
watching this for
right.
the first time, which I guess this is my first time watching it all the way through, like, you're going to see a lot of cliches that have been done like a million times that have been, like, at this point, like, parodied. And so, yeah, you're going to have to, like, sort of put that stuff behind you if you want to enjoy this movie at all. But yeah, and I will say I was kind of disappointed because, like, Canon is known for being pretty exploitative and sleazy. And yeah, since there really wasn't much to many of the kills in this at all. You're right; they were a lot of the violence is implied, and yeah, I don't know. Depending on what you're looking for, you might be disappointed with that. But I guess as far as like sort of like your typical setup a slasher kind of film, it's decent. Um, Moving on, we basically get our opening credits, and the opening song plays, and it is by the aforementioned band Shadow. And you're going to hear the song yet again later on. And so they're
Yeah, not even too long from now.
exactly. And it's showing all these, what I would say is like the sort of kind of typical 70s New York style like punk rockers, like a lot of like black leather and stuff, like getting into a car, getting ready to go stuff and go do stuff, and they're ready for a night on the town basically. So you see them, and then this music plays, and it's to me it sounds like cheesy 70s kind of glam rock with their harmonies and stuff. How would you describe the opening theme?
Yeah, it is weird. It is a little like glam rocky, like you said, but everybody else in the movie, like as far as the police and even like what was the host's name, Diane,
Uh,
how she
Blaze,
views
yeah.
herself, Blaze, excuse me. They like view it like like it's satanic music almost or something. Like it's so
Right.
weird.
Well, at this time, it was still dangerous to like be a punk rocker, but this just doesn't sound like a typical.
They don't feel or look very punk rockish to me. Well, some of them I guess like looked at, but the music didn't
That's
feel very
that's the
punk
thing
rock
is
to
that
me.
this particular song, not only is it not very punk, it's not even very like new wave. It's just yeah, it sounds like the music supervisor at Canon doesn't know anything about punk or new wave and was just like, this has got a drive and beat. Let's throw it
Yeah,
in there.
they do know all about cyborgs, so.
They eventually learn about them later on in Canon's career. So yeah, okay. So basically, these punk rockers are getting into mischief, and oh, I made sure to note that this was edited by Dick Brummer, which is just a funny name. I think he's always a Brummer. He's
I
a real
agree.
Brummer. So a car full of punk rockers exit at what we later find out is to be a studio. They mess with a security guard, and this is the second time that we see what we think is going to be a switchblade into play, and then it ends up just being a switch comb. Have you have you ever decided to threaten someone with the possibility of being stabbed by a switchblade, but then it's really just a switch comb.
No. I can't say I have, Steve. I just go straight to actual stabbing. How about you?
I'm always combing my hair with a switch comb. It makes me feel like a man. I just want everyone to know that.
Exactly.
So anyway, what I also love is that this security guard, along with pretty much all the other security guards and like side cops, like in this movie, are the worst actors like ever filmed. Like, did you notice that? Like how bad a lot of like the cops are in this?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is
pretty
like bad number one here. So now we're back with Dee or Diane or Blaze, whatever you want to call her, and her son Derek shows up with flowers. And I guess Derek is an actor. He tells mom that he got a new acting gig, and she doesn't care. I guess the idea is that she's just too into herself, or at least into the show, because I mean, it is like she's about to go live on a national like TV show here, and here Derek shows up and is like, "Oh, pay attention to me, mom." And I mean, he's not that young. He's got to be at least like what, 18, 19?
I was just gonna say Derek looks like, dude. I'm thinking like maybe even as late 20s possible.
Yeah.
But mid 20s at least. He looks only like a few years younger than his mom.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that has to do with the makeup his mom like that they put on her.
Yeah.
She probably looks even younger.
Do you think? I don't know if I should ask this later on, but I mean, basically, as we move through, we discover that Diane is the host of this like new wave. It's basically TRL. Was that what that show was called? Total Request Live. It's TRL for like new wave on New Year's back in the 1980s. Like, do you think she was the right choice for this role, or because it was weird? Because I could see like they need someone who's old enough to be a mom, but then like still young enough looking to be like a cool like rock and roll chick,
like hot or whatever.
Do you think she was the right choice?
I don't know, man, but I'll tell you what. Like, I just looked it up, and she was actually 19 years older than the guy that plays her son.
Wow, she's well preserved.
So she looks great for her age.
And Derek must have been like hitting the coke back then or something.
Well, here's the thing. So she was born in 1942, so that would have put her at 38 when this came out. You know, so she probably filmed this when she was 37, something like that. So, yeah, I mean, this kid, you hit it right on the head. He would have been at the most 19, 18, something like that. So he's got an older looking face.
Right. So yeah, basically the whole point of this scene is that Derek wants mommy's approval. She's basically too busy to give it. And he's sort of just, let's see, Derek tells his mom he got a new gig, too busy. Yeah.
Oh, you know, one thing I forgot to mention, Steve, is did you recognize who Derek? Because I did recognize the guy that plays Derek from a famous, I don't know if we'd call it a horror movie, but it's definitely like categorized as that, like another 80s cult classic.
No, I didn't.
He is one Michael Tobacco from Killer Clowns from Outer Space.
Oh, yeah. I think while I was looking for images, I think I saw a picture of him with the Killer Clowns. Man, wow, good for him. I would love to be involved with Killer Clowns from Outer Space.
I know, Killer Clowns is awesome.
Yeah.
Anyways, I just wanted to throw that in before I forgot.
Well, yeah, basically Diane is too busy dressing like a prostitute from Streets of Rage, and then Derek sort of storms out and says he wants to call his dad, who we're told he's in Palm Springs. And now we are inside the studio for this show, which is called Hollywood Hotline. And how would you describe this set?
I mean, it's very like, you know, late 70s, early 80s looking set.
Get your red neon. Yeah, people sitting out there with phones, like regular old landlines, waiting for calls for requests.
Yeah, at first I was, dude. It's funny. I had looked down for a minute, and when I looked back up, I'm like, "What? Is there a telephone going on?"
It was so weird.
because it was set up like a telethon, but I guess they were just taking like people's opinions on like what they thought the best new wave song of the year was. And I don't know why you need a phone bank to do
Right.
that, but I guess you do. Yeah, real
Yeah,
strange.
it
But
was.
I mean, telethons were like a thing in the 70s and 80s, very popular. So I guess maybe that's why they did it.
I guess.
Like you said, this movie is definitely a time capsule.
Hmm. So yeah, basically, I mean, you just painted a pretty good picture there. It's a MTV style variety call-in show set with a live band and a rowdy crowd filled with punk rockers or new wavers. Like I feel like they didn't want to use the word punk, like so they kept calling it new wave or something. But
Mm.
anyway, hosted by Diane, aka who was known as Blaze on this show. Another thing I found kind of hard to believe is that if these were like real, and I get that this is an attempt by Canon to like cash in on like punk and new wave, which was like huge at the time, but like if you're into that stuff, you're not gonna go watch a, a band play at like on a sterilized like TV studio set, because number one, they're probably not gonna let you in. And like number two, there's going to be all these rules. You're not going to be allowed to smoke. You're not going to be allowed to. I mean, they let them mosh, I guess. So that's one thing. I don't know. Is it?
Or I don't know, Steve. You're being very generous with moshing. They just kind of let them very lightly touch each other's
So
shoulders. We do have broken.
you find it hard to believe too?
Sorry, I just want. Yeah, yeah, very hard to believe. We have broken bread in the chat. Just wanted to say hello to them. Uh, but yeah, not only was the moshing like not very moshy, but did you notice like the weird like overdub of like feet shuffling that they added to the
Not really. I
to the
mean, now that
moshing?
you mention it, it's. I guess I get what you're talking about, but yeah, it didn't really dawn on me at first.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, they clearly, and which is a very common thing, right? To overdub sounds like that, but it's whenever they recorded like whatever audio they used to dub it in, it's only like two or maybe three people shuffling their feet around, but they're showing like 20, 30, 40, 50 people, so it doesn't like line up out of it. It really took me out of this fine
Right,
film.
and I mean, and on top of that, you got the fact that you've got Shadow the band up there playing these non-really moshy songs. Like it's like they're like they're the wrong band for that crowd. And I almost thought that
Yeah, or maybe it's the wrong crowd for these
yeah,
bands. I
yeah.
really don't
Either
know.
way, they don't match up, and it's just weird watching it, especially when they get to the one song where it's like a real slow song, and the guy, like the crowd is
Yeah.
like, I'm like, this is the least punk rock thing I've ever seen.
They're like moshing, even doing their shitty fake moshing even
Right?
slower.
It's so weird. Like again, I just assume that the people at Canon just had no idea what real punk and new wave was. But anyway, so they're going to be counting down the top new wave songs. They have TV showing like a live feed of all the other time zones. So since this one takes place in Los Angeles, that's already takes care of Pacific Standard Time. And then you got one in New York, one in Chicago, and Aspen, which like was that a happening like city at the time? I just thought it was so random.
Yeah, I thought it was random too. I don't know. Maybe it was. For their aren't there like famous ski
Oh
resorts
yeah,
there?
because there was
Maybe.
also a huge like a boom in skiing back then with all those stupid ski school
Yeah, yeah.
movies.
That's what.
One of these days we're gonna
Yeah,
cover
that's what
them
I'm thinking.
too. Yeah. So Blaze answers phones live on the air. Like she gets some jokey ones. It really harkened back to a much better movie in the WNUF,
Oh.
Halloween tape. To me, it just sort of
Hmm.
reminded me of that. And a guy calls in, and he's got a weird, like distorted voice. And it's funny because she says, "Oh, you sound like the Phantom." And do you know what that is a callback to? It's a popular movie at the
No, I
time.
don't.
Brian De Palma's Phantom of the Paradise. Have you ever seen that movie?
I've never even heard of
Oh
it.
man, you're in for a treat. We're gonna have to put that on the list. But anyway, so he calls and tells her to says, "Call me evil," and he's going to commit murder at midnight and kill someone close to her. So the band plays the same song we heard at the beginning, and Blaze, she sort of storms off stage and then asks Bernie, her manager, for more police protection. And he's like, "Oh, but we already got some." And she's like, "Well, give me more." And yeah,
Very Ryback of
yeah,
her.
for sure.
I guess Broken Bread has seen that Phantom movie because they said that movie rips.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. So yeah, then there's some more footage of the quote-unquote punks, quote-unquote moshing, and to the song, the opening song, and it's just hilarious because it doesn't sync up at all. And meanwhile, we see a man taking something out of his trunk, and he runs into the Crawford Sanitarium. Now, this man, he ends up being the quote-unquote evil. This is evil, and at this point, we don't really know his relation to Blaze, aka Diane, or anyone in the film. You don't even know he's a killer at this point. You really just see a man take something out of his trunk and runs into the Crawford Sanitarium. And there's a cook who's cleaning up after hours. He doesn't see him sneak in. Inside the sanitarium, they show the patients. They're watching Hollywood Hotline, and they're
And they're moshing just about the same level as the people like at Hollywood Hotline's show.
What do you think about the how they're portraying these mentally disturbed individuals in this film?
I mean, they seem very fun-loving. Yeah, they're just portrayed as fun. They're almost portrayed more as just like being kind of simple-minded and dumb than mentally handicapped or deranged or having mental health issues. So, but you know, it's a somewhat stereotypical depiction of that stuff back in the 80s and stuff. So, not too surprising.
And this must have been before Ronald Reagan shut down all the public mental institutions. But anyway, moving on, a sexy nurse takes a smoke break and runs into the mystery man, a.k.a. Evil. He says that County sent him over, and she buys it, no problem. And he asks if they can have some champagne together, and she's game. Like, sexy nurse, it's New Year's, she's up for anything. And
we should add, she was smoking a cigarette in the hall of the hospital she was walking down.
It was the 80s, baby. It was...
No, I know.
Everything was allowed back then.
No, I mean, I do remember. I mean, you know, that when I was little, like, you could smoke in parts of the hospital.
So I just remember at my grandmother's house, like, all my uncles just puffing away, and I'm like right there, 6 years old, breathing in all that secondhand smoke. Luckily, it didn't give me brain damage. Sorry, bad joke. Anyway. So they start drinking and then dancing, and then we're back at Hotline, and the punks are slow moshing to a slow song that we talked about earlier. And then Ernie brings two more cops to meet Dee, and one of them is Lieutenant Ed, the guy who was in The Incredible Hulk. The cops blame Dee's audience. Like, basically, he's like, "You got to expect this kind of stuff dealing with your audience." But he says they're going to help anyway. And this is when, like, I started thinking, like, you know, if this movie has, like, a particular theme or something, like, are they going to try to somehow tie this into, like, the punk rock crowd or something? But no, it never really happens.
Nope, sure doesn't.
Yeah. Dee calls up to Yvonne, and on the TV behind her, for some reason, they felt a need to show, I guess, the singer of Shadow licking the microphone. I guess they thought that would be, I don't know, funny or weird or punk rocky or something.
Yeah, it's real edgy.
Yeah. I remember when you used to lick the microphone when we were on stage, and I'd be like, "Whoa, no, that's bro, right. That is unsanitary."
It's too much. I remember you left you left the show once. Just
I was really offended. Very offended and a little turned on. Definitely not. But
well, I mean, I did see the masturbating in the court.
Well, you were deep throating the mic. What am I supposed to do?
Well, you know.
So Dee asked Derek where Yvonne is. Derek says he can't reach his dad and can't reach Yvonne. He starts telling her something, but then she hangs up. Derek takes some weird looking pills and starts looking really unstable, like just out of nowhere. Now we are back with a sexy nurse and Evil, and they are making out. And I guess it only took like 10 minutes. I mean, I guess that's just the magic of one. What was his name again? Niven or something.
Yeah,
Just,
yeah. Kip Niven, I
Kip
think.
Niven. I mean, with a name like that, how could you not make out with him? So the mental patients look on as the nurses put hats on them. I mean, that might be considered a little degrading, but whatever. It's New Year's. What are you gonna do? So the nurse and Kip Niven continue making out, and out of nowhere, he stabs her. And I don't know. I have to say, after this murder, I was starting to lose a little hope just because it was, again, like off camera. And I don't know. I think I just wanted more creativity in the kills than just the old, razor gimmick. What do you think?
Yeah, I totally agree. I will say towards the end of the movie's climax, there's the elevator stuff I thought was pretty creative. We'll get into that. But man, it also felt like too little too late.
Yeah, I definitely feel that. So now we are back at Hotline Hollywood. A new band plays, and it sounds a little bit better than Shadow. This is made in Japan. This sounds like it actually should be moshed to. I don't know. Do you remember this particular?
No, they were better.
Yeah.
They were definitely better, especially compared to the other ones.
Right. So Evil calls D again and plays the recording of him murdering the nurse. He tells her where to find the body and hangs up. Now we're back at the sanitarium, and I don't know. The way they shot this kind of felt like filler. I don't know. Maybe they were sort of building to some suspense. But the nurse, a different nurse from Sexy Nurse, she sort of wanders the hall, like calling out her name. Then she finds her like in a closet with her throat cut. What did you think of that scene?
Sorry, I had to sneeze. And that's what I thought of it. I mean, it was fine. Again, like you said, like the kill itself wasn't very exciting. So like the reveal of her like wasn't all that great either. So yeah, I mean, I was like starting to temper my expectations.
Right. So now we're back in the dressing room, and Derek plays with a switchblade and talks to himself in the mirror. I will say, like, at least someone had some semblance of, I don't know, I guess the ability of creating red herrings by having so many goddamn switchblades in this movie that maybe you start, thinking to yourself, maybe there's more than one killer. I guess that's the idea. Or maybe they just really like switchblades. They had a sponsor in Johnson's Switchblades. Like, if you find a better switchblade, you use it.
Well, I mean, but like you said, Steve, like this is like a time capsule movie, and in the 80s there were plenty of like bad guys in movies that had like switchblades,
especially in canon movies. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I'm not too surprised.
So yeah, Derek basically he's playing with the switchblade and he's talking to himself in the mirror, and for some reason he decides to take some lady's stockings and he's like cutting it with the switchblade, and then he stretches it over his head and for some reason pierces his ear. And this again is where I'm like, are they trying to say something about like sort of new wave culture or punk culture? Because like now he's kind of making himself look like someone that you would see in the crowd or something. And then he says to himself that he has a mental disorder, and then he tears up some flowers. Like, what did you take away from this scene?
I thought the same thing too. Like they were trying to like make some kind of weird comparison that like, oh, he's turning into like one of those people that listens to this kind of music. But like none of it makes sense. It's not followed up on. And if these people are like so bad, this audience is like so, inherently I don't know, evil or they're bad people. Why would a major network give them like this special where it's like being broadcast for hours because it's going over like 4 different time
Hmm.
zones for this like New Year's Eve countdown. So like it just like makes no sense if you stop and think about it. And that would be okay if the kills or and those other like slashery elements were like better. Then you can forgive a lot of like whatever it takes to get the plot to where it needs to go.
Right.
But I don't know, man. Unfortunately, like nothing's like executed particularly well.
No, I mean, I'll just go ahead and say it's a pretty sort of weak script. I feel like, again, the Canon executives were like, okay, there's not a lot of movies, horror movies about New Year's Eve, so we're doing that. And then you also have to include this hip new thing called New Wave. Now you go ahead and write a script around it. And this is what they came out with. And I just want to say, earlier, Broken Bread said that Phantom of the Paradise was one of De Palma's best. I think that Dress to Kill is his best. What's your favorite Brian De Palma movie? Yahel?
The one that Broken Bread likes.
But you already admitted to not seeing it.
I
Just
don't know if I've
say
ever seen
Mission
any of it.
Impossible. You seem like a Mission Impossible guy.
Oh, Mission Impossible. Yeah, man. I love me some Cruise.
Who doesn't? I mean, he's got the highest.
I
He's
love
got the highest.
Scientology. That's why I'm in
He's got the
Florida.
highest thetan levels in all the world.
That's right. That's right.
So now we're back inside the Hotline studio. Another song plays, and it's pretty good. And D takes a break. Evil, and now we're back with Evil. He's putting on a fake mustache, and then and that's just sort of a quick little scene. Then we're back with Lieutenant Ed, and he tells Dee that evil is for real. And she's like, kind of freaked out about it. Now we're back with Evil again, and he enters a discotheque. And all right, so you watched this today, so maybe you can help me out here. All right, so I wrote down like, why does he need to wear a fake mustache? Because no one in the discotheque knows who he is. Including the
Right.
woman who he ends up murdering, right? It's just some random woman.
And this is the only time that he like really hides his tries to like come up with a disguise too while he's murdering, right? So like why I don't know. I don't
It's
know.
like
And the mustache is
it
awful.
is.
Like it
It's
looks so
so
fake.
bad.
Like
And I was just like, man, if this is the 1980s and you can't look like a big shot unless you're wearing one of those, I guess, 1970s disco suits and a mustache, I guess, to do coke with, I guess.
yeah.
But yeah, it was. I don't know. It was cheesy, but it definitely. I liked it at least because it pushed this movie, which takes itself pretty seriously, into campier territory. But unfortunately, it doesn't go any further beyond his fake mustache. So yeah, Evil starts putting the moves on another woman, and man, I mean, he just pulls tail left and right. Any woman that Evil wants, he gets, no problem.
And Steve, like I have no problem saying like, hey, this is an attractive guy or
Mhm.
whatever. He's not like particularly attractive. He's very average
Yeah.
looking. He's he's not like super charismatic either. Like, he's very just a very average kind of guy,
Yep.
you
A
know.
guy that
Um,
works
I
bit parts in TV shows. That kind of
Yeah,
average.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I guess he does a good job of finding the right kind of victims, right? Because he does like tell like a story that he gets her to fall
Right.
for. And I did like that they at least made her give him an obstacle and made his victim seem a little bit more
Right.
intelligent than she first appeared when he I can't remember where he went. He goes to the bathroom or something. I can't remember. And he comes back and like now his victim is there with her roommate. She goes, "Well, you didn't think I'd just go somewhere alone with someone I just met, did you?"
Right. Yeah. I mean,
So
that was the one time they decided to use logic in this script. Um, and yeah, basically what happens is, I guess the girls go to the bathroom, or no, the girl goes to the bathroom. And he's like, "I'll meet you up front," and they meet, and yeah, she's got a roommate there. Yeah, which is good. It gives him, yeah, just a little bit of a problem to overcome. So yeah, I wrote down that that's the fakest mustache ever in cinema. Now we're back at Hollywood Hotline, and Made in Japan performs this song called Dumb Blondes, which was okay. It definitely sounded sort of new wavy. Not really moshable, but whatever. It was okay. Um, and then Evil escorts his prey and her roommate to his car. And now we're back with Lieutenant Ed and Dee, and he's asking her if she recognizes like the voice, even though it's distorted, like any kind of mannerisms. And she's like, "What are you, crazy?"
Right.
Yeah, these are all just sort of real short scenes. Now we're back with Evil. He's driving ladies in the car, and man, they make Sally. That's the name of his future victim. So annoying. I guess they want us to like feel good about her death or something. like, like they wanted us to like be like, God, somebody kill this bitch. Like, what did you think about that?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Like, I don't know. It's very weird. Like, this movie, like, can you name a likable character in this movie?
Maybe Lieutenant Ed. But I mean, there's not a lot of characterization for anyone else aside from like the core like people of Dee, her son, and the dad. But
yeah, but none of them are particularly interesting.
No.
The victims aren't likable, so you don't really. I mean, I guess you should, as a human being, just feel bad for somebody getting murdered, right? But there's nothing like in particular to make you like root for them to like live or whatever.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, even at the very beginning, Diane, they show her like neglecting her son and being like sort of like that typical uptight showbiz sort of prima donna, and yeah, that's a good point.
I think they tried. I think like their goal was to make you feel sorry for Derek, the son, so that then at the end when they have the little twist, you'd be like, "Oh, I've been bamboozled." But they don't really like do enough.
No, and yeah,
to make you feel for Derek. They don't give him enough character, and like that thing where he pierces himself, like they just make him come off like some like weirdo. So you're like, what?
Right.
I don't know. Too many mixed signals.
Yeah,
here.
this is a very middling script overall. So Evil's driving the ladies around as Sally talks about. She's basically, I would say, your typical, like, sort of California. Ooh, I went and I did transcendental meditation, and then once I was done with that, I did all this other new age crap, and you should do it too. And yeah, basically the 80s version of a CrossFitter. And yeah, so Evil parks his car. Actually, it's the roommate who asks for a pit stop. And so he pulls over to like a liquor store and gives her like, I don't know, like $100 bill or something.
$100 bill.
Says, go in there and buy the biggest bottle of champagne you can possibly get. So she grabs.
Which I guess is supposed to like make it so that it takes her longer to come back.
Right. I mean, at least they're putting a little thought into it, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, and I will say like, okay, obviously someone's going to have to break 100. So that will make it take a little longer, but we're talking about you're adding maybe an extra 30 seconds to the trip.
Exactly. And I thought it was funny that, I mean, they actually shoot inside the liquor store and they show the roommate going through the transaction. And then when she comes out, surprise, surprise, the Evil mobile has like driven away. But she,
dun.
Immediately you think, oh, he drove away and is now murdering her somewhere. But Sally's roommate looks down and she sees a shoe with a little blood on it. And then she sees another. She walks a little bit further down the alley and sees another shoe. And then I think this might be the best scene in the whole movie.
I agree. This cracked me up.
Lifts up the dumpster, and you're expecting to see the
like the lid for the dumpster. She's not the Hulk. She doesn't lift up the dumpster.
Right. My mistake. She lifts up the lid to the dumpster, looks inside, and you're expecting to see Sally's body. What does she see instead?
She instead sees our good buddy Kip Nevin, a.k.a. what's his name? Richard Sullivan,
Evil,
I think.
Yeah, he's Evil.
Yeah, he's like,
he's in there waiting for her. Just as she lifts it up, he has the foresight to turn on a lighter That way it can actually
Oh, that's right.
illuminate inside the dumpster so we can see it as the audience. And
Yeah.
it's just the cheesiest looking thing. And also, it makes no sense. And so, yeah, and then I think it pretty much cuts like with her screaming. So,
And he's like pulling her into the
yeah,
dumpster
yeah.
and
And yeah,
killing her.
so just walk me through the logic behind that. How did that work out?
Well, first he kills
Hmm.
Sally, right? And I don't think we talked about how he killed her. He like uh right, because he's like, oh yeah, I got some weed
Oh, yeah, I
basically.
skipped over that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and he's like, so he has like a bag, like a clear plastic bag. He's like, oh, it's real good stuff. Have a whiff, and he puts it up to her face. There's nothing in the bag,
Mm.
and it's very obvious there's nothing in the bag. And she goes to smell it, but then she very generously, because he wants to strangle her with with this plastic bag, she helps him put it on her. I don't know if you noticed. Like he tries to start putting it on, it's not quite going on. She like grabs it and like pushes her own head
That's
into
very
it.
nice of the
Anyway,
actress to help sell the work.
yeah, yeah. It reminds me of that TNA pay-per-view where like Bubba was supposed to go through a
Hmm.
table and like he laid on the first table and it just broke. It just shattered and then he got like they worked themselves to another spot where like there's another table out. And obviously, for those that don't know, tables in wrestling, when somebody goes through it, the table's been pre-cut.
Hmm.
Shh. Um, but obviously these tables like they went too far in the pre-cutting.
Hmm.
So like Bubba very gently, he gets punched once and like very gently places himself on the table, and then Jeff Hardy has to go through mayonnaise. It's awful. It kind of reminded me of that,
Hmm.
but yeah. And then I guess after he like suffocates Sally, Evil is like, well, let me, I guess, cut her to get some blood on the shoe because there's no blood when he kills her. He just
Right.
suffocates her. So I guess he cuts
Hmm.
her. Then he like places the shoe out there. He leaves like a trail basically to the dumpster because then like there's like a piece of clothing from Sally's dress or something that he like has sticking out of the dumpster
Hmm.
lid. So I guess he's just hoping she'll see the shoe, won't be like, oh fuck, there's blood. Let me call the police, and instead it will just investigate herself.
Hmm.
Yeah, I guess he just knows his victims.
Yeah. I mean, that was a. I would say it's a nice little subverting of expectations because I really just thought she was gonna find the body of Sally in there, but instead there with the lighter. Oh man, it's hilarious. If you haven't,
Yeah, and the thing is, like, it's fine that it's a little weird, right? Like the setup to like get her to go to the
mhm.
dumpster, but because it was like a fun kind of stupid, even though we don't see the kill, it was like a fun setup. Like you're willing to forgive the ridiculousness of like him leaving this trail, and unfortunately, this doesn't really happen again in the movie
Yeah,
where we get like
this
a
is
super interesting
basically the
kill.
apex of the movie here. They should have done,
Yeah.
if they would have put more thought into other scenes like this, then this really could have been something special. Not saying it's not. Wait till the end. So let's see. Evil removes his disguise as a squad car drives by. Then two cops find Sally and her roommate at a kids park, and it's really funny when they find the way they find. I think it's the roommate's body when they're just. It's like a really tight shot of. I guess they just find sort of the bottom of the slide, and the body just slides down the slide. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Uh, I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
nice
Yeah.
try, but it doesn't really make any sense. Like they would
No,
have
it really
seen the
doesn't.
body while they were approaching the slide. Like it was so stupid. Um, so yes. Now, all right. Now Evil is on the prowl in his car, and he's dressed as a priest. He's eyeing a picture of a nun, and he accidentally hits a biker. So I guess the idea is that he now wants to go and murder this nun, but now there's a gang of bikers after him. I hate when that happens. So he drives away from them and hides in a drive-in movie theater. But unfortunately for him, the bikers follow him because, I mean, they have motorcycles, you know? So he takes off on foot and runs into one of the bikers and he stabs him. And then he steals a car from two kids making out. He throws the dude out, but the girl stays in the back of the car. The girl escapes from the car And then because Evil is forced to stop the car because of two random drunk dudes that just show up out of nowhere. Your thoughts on any of
Celebrating New
yeah,
Year's. I mean, they are celebrating New
but
Year's
just
in their defense.
two random guys out of nowhere. I don't know. It's funny.
Yeah, it was
Mhm,
dumb. It was just set up this running away scene where the victim is trying to
sure,
run away or
sure,
whatever.
sure.
By the way, interestingly enough, because I was like, oh, somebody uploaded this to YouTube. There must not be any nudity in this movie. Uh, oh, there is, kind of. You see some
Hmm.
boob. So yeah, just a heads up for
All you
those who
all you
are
gorilla
tricked.
perverts out there, gorilla masked perverts out
Yeah.
there, because in this director's previous work, The Three-Way Weekend, there is also nudity on YouTube there if you want to check it out. So,
Oh,
perving
interesting.
up, perving up.
Yeah. Obscurity Now, your place to find out where to see nudity on
All the
YouTube.
best softcore you never knew you needed. This uh, girl, she's hiding under a shack as Evil closes in. And right as he finds her, a very poorly acted cop shows up. He's like, "Hey, you over there, police, stop!" But Evil gets away as it normally does. Now
Hmm.
we're back at Hotline Hollywood, and during a commercial, Lieutenant Ed makes an announcement to all the punks, and they're all disrespectful, saying, "Get off the stage, pig," and stuff like that. And he says if anyone leaves, they can't come back in because they're really locking down the security. I mean, heaven forbid you should just call off the show, because people might lose their
Yes,
lives.
yes.
But this is Hollywood, baby. The show must go on. So Lieutenant Ed brings in a psychiatrist to D, and I have to say, this guy's like delivery and just overly hammy performance was pretty awesome. He
Yeah.
tells her, basically, I would say it mirrors Donald Pleasance in the original Halloween. I mean, that's basically the only reason he's here. They're just like, oh, we gotta have someone give a Donald Pleasance style monologue. So they bring in this guy, and he's basically like blah 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 blah, and he's most likely going to try to kill D at midnight. And what did you think of the psychiatrist?
I mean, it was fine. It did feel kind of just like random though, because this guy just like pops up. Like we have no idea before this, unless I missed it, that a psychiatrist had even been called in.
And he's never
So
seen again.
yeah,
Never seen again. So Derek is creeping nearby during their exchange, and he's still wearing like the pantyhose and like the glasses, which ironically, in the very early days of Devo, they used to dress like that on stage. So that was a real.
oh, so you must have been once again turned on by another
Oh man, I
performance.
was having
I'm
a
sure.
three-way weekend, baby.
Ooh, I don't want to know what that means.
I don't know what it means either. So
I don't want to be a witness at your divorce. That's all.
well, who else am I gonna call? So
I'm not reliable, Steve. You know my record.
sorry, officer. He was drunk at the time, and he's currently drunk. But so now we're back with Evil. He exits a cab outside of the Hollywood Hotline studio, and he sees that the cops aren't letting anyone in. He creeps around to a back entrance, and this is, I mean, just one of those where you have to sort of suspend your disbelief. He's like, hey, officer, like, do you remember his excuse for getting the cop to leave his post? He's like, there's a drunk guy over here, or something like that.
Oh yeah, I know. I think that's literally what he yells, something like
Yeah.
that. Like, oh, there's a guy that's drunk over here.
So I don't think they're trying to make a commentary about LA cops or anything, but he stupidly leaves the entrance, and then Evil takes him out with a brick.
As you
just
do.
a brick laying down on the ground. So we get another performance by Made in Japan, and then Evil steals the cop's uniform, and he walks right into the building because I mean that's just how '80s cops were back then. Then Evil changes clothes yet again, right in the hallway. Nobody sees him, And then Dee enters her dressing room with a cop. This is Officer Green. And he investigates the premises. And then he almost shoots Derek. I don't really understand the point of this scene. And then Derek leaves angry. And then the cop exits. Basically, she's like, hey, can you have a minute? Or can I have a minute so I can change or something? And he's like, okay. So he leaves. And then big surprise, Evil is in there wearing a mask. And then it turns out, all right, wait, everybody. Suspense building. It turns out that all this time, Evil is Richard Dee's husband. Was
But we knew that. We had already seen her husband. Like,
No.
we had already seen him as her husband way at the beginning of the
No,
movie.
they never showed him as her husband, though.
She's like literally talks to him. She has a conversation with him about Derek.
No, they talks about him, but they never show his face. You never know that he is her husband. Never.
Oh, really? Oh, I guess I recognize his voice.
That's why
because I was like, oh, it's
that's
that
why
guy.
he used the voice distorter. So
Yeah, but we see him kill people as himself and talk in his regular voice.
right, but we never see like Dee or Derek be like, oh, I miss Dad, and then here's a picture of him right here. We never know what he.
Right, but okay. Let me put it this way. All right, so I thought we saw his face at the beginning, but I guess not. And when he first does his first kill with, or really his second kill with the nurse, and we see his and he's talking in his regular voice. I guess I recognized that from like his conversation with her because I was like, oh, her husband's the killer.
I mean, it's not hard to figure out like either way because
no, it's not. Yeah. I'm no Columbo.
I mean, just because they
no Angela Lansbury.
R.I.P. to both of them. No James Rockford.
Yeah.
But anyway,
that I'm no
Sherlock Holmes, Magnum PI.
Well, no, yeah, it has to be like not as big as Sherlock Holmes. So yeah, I'm no Magnum PI. I'm no Richard Grieco, the market.
Yes, nailed it. All right, let's finish this up. So yeah, basically he's like, this was supposed to be the surprise that I was going to show up and actually support you in your career, my darling wife. Like that's what Derek was trying to tell you. Ha ha ha.
Think about this. I was going to surprise you by supporting you.
Well, we show up. He's a pretty shitty husband, as we're gonna see.
Yeah.
So.
Well, apparently, we'll find out what his motivations are soon.
Just the lamest you could possibly imagine. But anyway, so Evil, aka Richard, creeps over to a circuit breaker. He also sort of introduces himself to the cops, to Officer Green. He's like, don't shoot me, Officer Green. I'm her husband. And then has Dee back him up. So so after that, Evil, aka Richard, creeps over to the circuit breaker. Lieutenant Ed gets a call saying Richard's car was found at a drive-in. And now they basically know that he's the killer. And they go after him. Dee and Officer Green are in the elevator. This is all right. They never say what Richard's job is, right? Like, I mean, what he does.
No, it sounds like this is a real Gem and the Hologram situation where Blaze makes all the money, right? And what's his face? Evil / Richard. He doesn't work,
right?
Because he talks about like his allowance.
He's a house husband, which I mean. That's
like the boyfriend from Gem and the Holograms. I would love to be a house husband.
We could add that to the list. So yeah, Richard. So this is why I asked that, because out of nowhere, Richard is MacGyvering this like elevator control / circuit breaker.
Yeah, apparently he's like a master electrician / elevator engineer, because not just anybody can like work on elevators. Like you need to know certain specific things. Like it's a trade that you have to like really study for and be certified for. But I guess Richard's got a lot of free time, baby.
He knew he was gonna need to like sort of jimmy rig an elevator, so he went to the local library because they didn't have the internet back then and studied up on the plans.
He He opened up the microfiche for the elevator.
Nah, he opened up his copy of Encyclopedia Britannica and
Yeah.
and went to town. But yeah, so Richard is messing around with this elevator circuit breaker, which like causes the elevator to malfunction and I guess drop really fast, and it also causes Diane and Officer Green to basically pass out, more or less. I mean,
Well, I think Officer Green gets killed.
no, he's not killed yet.
Oh, do we see him later?
Because he walks into the elevator, he being evil slash Richard, and he knocks out Officer Green.
You're right. You're right. He like hits him
Yeah,
again.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then I guess throws him out of the elevator because they don't really sort of show what happens to him after that. But and anyway, he wakes up Dee and basically sits next to her, like very sort of creepily in the elevator, and starts admitting that he was evil. And here's his
Right. He like plays back a recording from one of the murders that she already
he
heard.
does that, yeah. And his reasons for doing this. Okay, help me and correct me if I'm wrong. Okay, so as Yahel was saying, he's fed up being a house husband and being emasculated, and also that
Well, I think he was more like fed up with not getting his allowance on time or something like that. I can't remember. But he complains about the money he's getting.
well, see,
from
there's
her.
a couple like there's so many reasons.
No, you're right. You're right. You're right. This is a buildup of reasons.
Yeah, and like on top of that, he's also sick of not only her, but the fact that she's like all the women in his life, which they never alluded to or never showed anything. He says women are deceitful and manipulative. And like the whole time I'm watching like this, typical sort of, the killer does his like monologue or reveal thing. It's just like how like boringly delivered it was by one Kit Niven. How unscary, unbelievable he was the whole time.
Right. He's basically like an incel that somehow ended up getting married. And he's still mad about the time that he was an incel because he's complaining about how the women before her used him and manipulated him, and she's just like them.
Right, and continue.
And granted, he had like earlier in this movie, like his victims like are women that he's seducing, or at the very least flirting with and making out with. So like why is he complaining about the way she is with men? I guess he probably feels justified.
I guess, and plus at the same time, I mean, all right. So they also. Gosh, he is like, the perfect storm of just quote unquote psycho killer or whatever, because the cops also mention that he was actually in that sanitarium that he went to at the beginning, that he was committed at one point. Did you catch that?
Oh, I missed that.
It's like, how could have,
as I told you offline, Steve, I at times had difficulty with paying attention to this movie.
I mean, with good cause. And like, how could Diane like not know that from like the man that she married actually spent time in an insane asylum? I mean, I guess information was harder to come by back then, but
right. She couldn't ask for a Carfax report on his past.
Carfax references. That's what people tune into for here at Obscurity Now. So So anyway, Richard takes Dee. The cops begin to patrol the building. Richard wraps a chain around Dee and attaches it to the elevator. He does his little MacGyver thing to the elevator controls, and then it raises Dee she's dangling from the elevator, and it.
Yeah, and actually these scenes were pretty cool.
I mean, this is definitely something that hadn't been seen before that I know of, in at least an 80s slasher. And like, what a weird sort of random thing, like that they just wrote it in. I mean, again, because it symbolizes nothing. It doesn't support the theme because there is no theme. And it's just like, hey, wouldn't it be cool looking if he attached his final victim to an elevator and raised it all the way to the top? That's like.
Well, and we should be a little more specific. Like, she's not just attached to the elevator. She's like dangling from the bottom of the elevator.
The shaft.
So basically, inside the shaft, right? So she is like beneath the floor. So if the elevator goes all the way down to the first floor, eventually she'll literally be squashed underneath the
Yep.
elevator. So it's actually like a pretty like cool little set piece. Probably didn't cost a lot of money. They dangled a real person. You see them moving their
Yep.
legs around. Like I appreciate that somebody got paid $20 on a hot dog. No, they got paid a Coke and a hot dog for this
That's like
probably.
the standard
Uh,
canon rate.
right, right. So yeah, I mean it's pretty cool to see that shot of her like being like dragged up the elevator shaft, hanging from underneath it. Doesn't she see like somebody else's dead
Yeah, that's
body
like
when she gets to the
the
top?
cherry on the cake there. She gets to the top and sees Yvonne from the beginning. I guess he stashed her body up there.
Oh, that's right, that's
Nice
right.
little
That's what it was.
callback, I suppose. So now Lieutenant Ed and the cavalry, they find Richard. They have a little shootout and they end up shooting the elevator control box. But somehow Richard gets away, but the cops are hot on his trail right behind him. Richard shoots a cop as he runs up to the roof. Richard then puts on the previous is it's a Nixon mask, right? The mask that he wears?
Is it?
Ish
I don't know.
Nixon-ish mask for no reason. And this is like a thing like the mask there's no build up to it or a reason for him to wear it. Like you don't even see it at the beginning. It was just like, hey, the marketing department decided that they needed like a Halloween mask to try to sell that year or something. So let's write it in.
Right.
He puts on the Nixon mask and then this was the most pretentious, like cheesiest thing they could have possibly have done here. He starts quoting Shakespeare, which
Yep.
King Lear, I think, or no, Hamlet, I don't know. And he jumps off the roof. He turns into a dummy and dies. And by turning into a dummy, I mean they just threw a dummy off the top of the roof.
How dare Kip not commit to the part and jump off
Well,
the
what
roof
did
for
you
real?
think of all that? The Nixon mask, the Shakespeare, the dummy.
Well, the mask thing is like weird because, and I guess it's like a cross of like it's like a bit of a Nixon mask in the face, but it also has like kind of clown-like makeup. And the color's like a whitish, off-white gray. So, um, why did they just now bring out this mask? Like, it just kind of felt like, why is he putting it on? Everybody already knows what he looks like. Doesn't he put it on in front of a cop?
Oh, he put it on in front of well, yeah, I guess like technically he did. First, he put it on in front of D when he was in that dressing room, and then yeah, for no reason he put it on like before the chase scene. I think is when he put it on.
The mask pretty much only exists so that, like, spoiler alert, Derek, his son, puts it on later. That's the only reason why the mask
It's
exists.
really tacked on, just like his reason for all these murders. Oh, and that's like I guess missed the sort of the main reason slash premise for this entire movie. The reason why he was murdering people at the stroke of midnight was because he was basically resolving to be done with her. Right?
Yeah, he was gonna start. He said something about he's gonna start his new life at midnight.
Without her, yeah, fresh, which
Right.
is the
And he was also mad that like he makes a big deal about the fact that like their son got a part on some TV show, and when he auditioned, he didn't tell them that he was her son, so he didn't use like his real last name or something, and he got the part all on his own.
yeah, and she didn't care, and that's one of the
Right.
reasons why, yeah,
But it's
like
not that she didn't care. She never found out because, like you said earlier, she had to like kind of cut the conversation with her son short to go like whatever.
right, yeah. There's just so many flimsy reasons for him to be a
Yeah.
murderer that they really all amount to nothing.
Right. And it's like again, like, are we supposed to like his motives?
Right.
Like, because earlier they try to make his son seem. I feel like the goal, like I said, was to make his son seem sympathetic, and part of the reason for Richard's motives is to defend his son,
Right.
and the way he's been treated. But I mean, Richard's not great. The mom's not great. Like I don't care about any of these people.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if Richard would have not, turned into a dummy and fallen off the roof, like if he somehow would have succeeded with killing D, like, eh. So there, so there's one less like TV show host, like,
Yeah.
but
Who was not involved in her son's life,
right,
and
right.
All right.
So, all right, Derek then cradles his dad's like bloody corpse in his arms, and he takes the Nixon mask. And then they come and they load D into the ambulance. And then, as they're driving away, or before they drive away, the camera pans away from D to the driver of the ambulance, and it's Derek wearing the Nixon mask. And laying in the passenger seat below is the body of the ambulance driver. And then they drive away, and then they play the same song that they played at the beginning. Fade to black, roll credits, and that is New Year's Evil. What did you think of that ending, Yahel Velasquez?
Boy, if they had, I don't know, spent more time with Derek, making us think Derek was a good guy, still leave like a little bit of a breadcrumb because you don't want it to come completely out of nowhere. But I I didn't expect it per se, but I just didn't care enough about Derek, so I didn't care about this twist.
Right. Yeah. I mean, Canon was all about the sequels. Like they used to film like multiple films in a row, so they could save money. And I'm sure they wanted to have this become a franchise like Halloween or Friday the 13th, but
Right.
they didn't do a good job on the script. So, I mean, I imagine even audiences back then were probably didn't care by the time this movie ended. And I know I didn't by the time it was all over. I mean, if the thing that stands out to me most about the two things that stand out to me most about this movie is number one, it takes place during New Year's Eve, which is not something you get every day in a slasher movie. And number two, all like the new wave exploitation and how it doesn't really work. Like, and of course,
Yeah.
him in the dumpster with his lighter. But I don't know. Anything else to add before we render our verdicts?
No, I think you covered it pretty well, Steve.
All right, let's do this thing.
Remember, obliterated. That's the question.
All right, Agent Velasquez. Do you think that New Year's Evil should be tossed in the black void of obscurity, never to be heard from again, or should it be remembered for all of cinema history?
For me, I'm gonna say toss this one to the bin. Wasn't memorable. It was bad, but like no, not so bad. It's good. Just kind of boring, bland, and yeah, uninteresting character, uninteresting performances, and outside of like the dumpster thing and the elevator thing that we talked about, pretty uninteresting as a whole. What say ye, Stephen?
I say, yay, that you are pretty much correct in everything you said there. If you're, I mean, I'm a big fan of like new wave and punk from the 80s. And even that doesn't really save this movie for me. I mean, this is like a one watch. Like, I don't know if this is even considered a cult classic. I know it got a pretty big Blu-ray release not too long ago, but yeah, as you said, it's not so bad. It's good. It takes itself like too seriously. Like there's not enough fun, not memorable enough
Right.
kills. It's all so middling that it's all forgettable.
And it's too bad because it's not a bad idea for a
Premise
premise.
is good. Premise is good. It just wasn't executed all that great. I'd be interested to.
And
What's that?
I'm just really surprised that like they didn't do anything to build tension to each kill, right? Because it's like, okay, you have like they're doing like these time zones, right? There's an hour between each one for most of them, and it's like, why didn't you do like a thing? Okay, we've got 1 hour to find the next victim, kind of a thing, So there's like nothing done to like build tension or like a sense of urgency, and I don't know, man. I could see somebody like doing not that it would take much, but doing a better job with like this concept.
I agree. It's a good premise, and if it hasn't been remade, it probably should be. But it sounds like we are in agreement. Therefore, New Year's Evil shall be obliterated.
The heathens have spoken. You are obliterated.
Oh, well,
Quite a way to start off the new year, Steve.
with an obliteration. Hey, I was disappointed. I thought this was going to be good. I would say it didn't reach the level of disappointment that I had with Thanksgiving 3, but it was
Yeah,
close. Like
fair.
I wanted this to be good. Basically, I wanted it to have over the top kills
Yeah,
and
I thought it was
like
exactly.
because canon is usually known for like fast pace, like violence, and yeah, and this really didn't have it just didn't have that. It wasn't the canon way, but yeah, so it is what it is. But before we sign off, I don't know. Anything you want to say about New Year's or resolutions or what you expect from the year 2023?
I mean, I'm not the kind of person that I don't usually make resolutions. The only thing I try to do every year, which I might not even bother this year, is I try to go vegetarian
Why would you want
every
to do
year.
that?
Well, I mean, I do feel bad about eating animals. That's really the only reason, but they are delicious.
Yahel Velasquez, he loathes humans but doesn't want to eat animals. What a
Yeah.
interesting fellow.
But I think last year I made it like the longest. I think I made it maybe like 3 weeks last year. But I don't think I'm gonna bother because it's hard for me to get in that much protein and
Gotta have
gotta
that protein, and plus,
gotta have them chiseled looks. That's more important than animals to
if
me, I
you
guess.
consume the soul of the animal, it helps keep you younger and more virile.
Oh,
So you can have
oh,
a
is that
three-way
true?
weekend.
Well, I can't be virile anymore, Steve. As you may have
Oh
heard,
God, here we go.
I have had a vasectomy, Steve.
Right. Okay. Then more sexually active. Then
What?
it'll make you
Hey.
more if you consume the souls of.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
If you're
Yeah.
in your mind, you're like, how could I possibly be more sexually active? I'm like
I'm like,
the
I need a
great.
break, Steve.
I'm like the Ric Flair over here, the Ric Flair of Tampa, Florida.
I'm trying to have less sex, and more lovemaking in the new year.
Yes, now that's a resolution I think anyone can get behind.
What about you, Steve? What are your New Year's
Oh, my New
resolutions?
Year's resolution is to fund issue 2 of Escape
I
to
had a
Earth.
feeling.
Thank you for bringing that up. I mean, it launched, the Kickstarter launched in December. I mean, we're at 25%, which I'm really surprised it got that far because everyone says you shouldn't launch a crowdfunding campaign during Christmas. But I'm not going to let a thing like Christmas get in the way of me and my ambitions of making it in the comic book industry. And but one thing that will get in the way is if the book is not funded. So if you're into comics and you like dinosaurs and action, especially like 80s and 90s style canon action, if you will, then please head on over to Kickstarter. There will be a link in the description. You can purchase issue 1 and help issue 2 get made. And I'm going to run a promo for the book before we sign off here. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Yahel, before we sign off here?
No, just everybody have a happy New Year, and don't watch New Year's Evil today or any other day. for that matter.
I mean, maybe watch it. Tell us if we're wrong. That's one thing I always forget to ask. Like, give us your feedback about Escape to Earth, New Year's Evil. Give us
Steve does not want your feedback about Escape to Earth.
No.
He has already made his decision, his mind up about how good his own comic
I just
is.
want your money, to be honest. Just like one Rob Liefeld, who, if you criticize his work in any way, he will hunt you down via social media and make you apologize. But then, that would never.
But Rob Liefeld, in his defense, he doesn't want your money. He wants your devotion.
God, that you should see the people in that Facebook group that I'm in because they are devoted. All right, we'll be back with something next Sunday once we figure it out. Thanks so much for watching this episode. And yes, why don't you let us know if you've seen it, what you think about Christmas Evil, New Year's
And
Evil.
obligatory, we actually like Rob Liefeld.
Yes, of course we do. All right, so we'll see you next Sunday as we continue to unearth even more obscure media only on Obscurity Now. Bye-bye. I'm having a weird day. The name's Adam. Where I'm from, I'm known as the Zero Thief. Depending on who you ask, some might say I'm the best thief. But believe it or not, even the best screws up every once in a while, and that's what I did, and I had to make a fast getaway. I ended up crash landing on this bizarre planet. Turns out, I didn't get away fast enough. These winged freaks followed me here.
It's just us here, Zero Thief, on this empty backwoods planet. So start talking, either to me or my blade.
Okay, I do have something to tell you. It's about the planet. It's not that empty. Come on, man, I thought you were gonna die. Come on, loose. Cut me loose. Behind you. Whoa! Thought I was done for. It was gonna be a light snack for a snarling creature, but then she showed up, riding on the back of one of those monsters like it was nothing. And with a wave of her hand, the other razor-toothed beast just stomped away. I'd never seen anyone like her before in my life. I thought I'd say something clever. Thanks, have you seen my ship? She gave me a look that said more than words ever could, because I think she was trying to read my mind or something. And from there, things just got even weirder. Escape to Earth. Issue 2, crowdfunding now. You've been enjoying Obscurity Now, a podcast that's recorded live to tape and streamed to Twitch and YouTube. Subscribe so you never miss an episode or hilarious quip. Take us with you by following the download links provided in the show notes to wherever you get podcasts. And take notice of our various social media links if that's what you're into. I'm not here to judge. And make sure you join us live next week at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific as we continue to discuss more obscure media only on Obscurity Now.